Hi everyone. I'm here seated thinking about various topics from morning till evening as I meet many wonderful people through my journey. And I thought of capturing a few of my thoughts so that it will prompt you to start thinking of the topics that are everyday topics for all of us, but might be valuable to sit and think about different angles. And my conversation talks about my particular perspective of it, and it hopefully invokes in your thoughts certain perspectives you would have on it. At least that's the intention. The topic that I'm going to talk to you today is about brain drain. The World Bank says that we have almost about 2.5 million people in terms of Sri Lankans out there, and of which 1 million highly skilled people. Statistics are flown all over by saying over 300,000 people left Sri Lanka in the year 2022. And yet, we need to understand that brain drain happens everywhere. And it is assumed that as a result of this brain drain that we won't have employable people in our businesses. And add to all of this with the economic wars, the political wars, the many wars that we wage on a daily basis. We're very worried about the continuity of our nation. The beauty of it is that most of the developed world have similar problems, and yet their media machines are able to fortify the thought process of positivity in the minds of many to say nationalistically, don't worry, we are doing very well, as opposed to many of our Asian countries who normally look down upon themselves when something goes wrong. Our economy is down by about 15% as far as cost of living goes, and yet I do know that there are numbers of 70% and 80% of food inflation. Um, UK and the US also have about 6 to 7%. And if you really think about the difficulties they're going through, is different, but it's still difficult. Now, the the discussion is about brain drain and about who is actually going. If you are a parent and if you had kids, what's the first thing that comes to your mind? How do I educate my kids outside the country? Most of you. If you can afford it, which better institution can you send them to? If you're young enough, your thoughts are about, can I find a better place? Remember those old thoughts that many people left their countries yesteryear to go to America to be able to live the American dream? Now, similarly, everybody has dreams, and somehow pasture is always greener on the other side. Somehow, food cooked in another place is always tastier than the food you have at home. And yet, when you talk to friends, you will say, well, our culture, our beaches, all that. How many of your beaches have you actually seen in your own home country as opposed to when you visit another country? So our thoughts are always about going out there. But we can then sit back and think about how the country is not doing well and everybody is having a brain drain. Good for conversation. Question: is it a good thing or a bad thing? Next question: what do you do about it? That's the question. What do you do about it? It is what it is. What do you do about it? So, is brain drain a good thing or a bad thing? It's an academic exercise. There are evidence to show that when people migrate to another country or move to another country to work, they are able to bring out a higher percentage of capacity and capability to do the work better. There is evidence of the fact that new fresh blood coming in, their innovative thoughts, they bring with them their tacit knowledge, which helps the teams to grow. There is enough evidence to show that they go for a purpose and therefore they are more focused and their level of achievement is that much greater. skill wise. All these things are true. So there's nothing wrong with brain drain as so long as you can work with it. From an organizational perspective, there are some organizations like airlines, like fast food outlets, global chains that have structured their jobs in such a way that even if they have about 15 to 20% of attrition, that attrition is a part of the business itself. A particular airline, they know the shelf life of an employee that they hire of a very high aptitude and education is nothing more than 2 years. So they invite people to come join the airline saying, come see the world with us. So it's not about the job of doing that stewardess job, but come see the world with us. So educated people will take a break, come work for them, and they will get back to their professions henceforth. And that transition is taken and accounted for within the strategy of the business. Similarly, there are process driven organizations where it can be taught in a very short term. This whole idea of thinking that 30 years of a knowledge cannot be replicated means that the level of obsolescence of knowledge is 30 years. You and I both know that come 1st of January, we didn't know what ChatGPT was. Come today, everything we are talking about, artificial intelligence taking over, and it's been only 5 months. Now we figured out that artificial intelligence, that to you and I, which was academic, had been actually in use for some time, which we didn't know. So my thought process is useless lamenting about and talking about it. It is how our businesses, how our countries, how our individuals come to this point of, okay, if this is what the situation is, how do I deal with it? It is that inner grit and strength of turning around and saying, I need to do something about it. There is nothing you can do in the past but learn from its lessons. We've learned from our lessons in 83 when most people left our country because some had to, some wanted to, and it is what it is. There are other instances in our history of 35 years that people have come and gone. And yet, industry has succeeded continuously. Now, if you were to look at it from that point of view, what I would look at is from an organizational perspective, look at who is most critical in terms of knowledge. Can that criticality be sourced externally? Can that criticality of the job be retrained or education? Can we spend more time with our academic institutes so that we are able to have a greater impact? I do know that there are many private organizations and professional bodies that spend time on career guidance, on subject curriculum development teams at universities in Sri Lanka. Yet there is no major impact as far as that academic world and the private sector is concerned. At the end of the day, so many say. And yet, you do have the brightest of the brightest coming out. So, sporadic changes in policy is well and true. But consistently, whether we are able to look at, okay, it doesn't mean that we need to make Sri Lanka a training ground where everybody else will take us. No, not necessarily. But you look at the IT industry in India, the best brains have gone to the Silicon Valley and have taken over most of the IT companies. Does not mean that India is dying in terms of its IT infrastructure or its IT training or its universities or the impact on the country. Right? So they will go, they will have remittances, and also as proud citizens of the nation, they will also do well for themselves, aspirations for their lives and their kids, just like you and I. But the question is whether we are willing to go to the fundamentals of understanding the skills of the future and to be able to sit down and to understand whether we can actually start developing them. A heart surgery done 10 years ago would have scars all over the body. Today, they will do it with minor cuts because the methodology they use has changed. So you and I will lament the doctor has moved on. So is the processes. We should be proud of that doctor who's found a better place to go to, and maybe his own practices will be developed in this new place, and he's one of our sons or daughters. Wish him well. But there are many other doctors that could be developed and improved under new ways where some of those old doctors may not have used those skills. You willing to sit there and cry about it, or are you willing to do something about it? Yes, brain drain is an issue if you don't do anything about it. Just like many of the other issues. Climate is an issue. Aging population is an issue. More so for Japan, as much as it is for China, the largest. Well, it's the second largest in terms of population now. India is the largest in the world. But nevertheless, those are problems. So you have to face problems. You have to nurture your children and the next generation on a problem-solving mindset, not on drowning themselves psychologically about the problems they're going through. So therefore, I leave these thoughts not because they're absolutely the truth, but because I want to rekindle some thoughts in you so that you can sit and have your own thoughts around this topic. But I hope at the end you wake up and say, I am going to be a contributor positively towards arresting the problem, not talking about the problem or being a part of the problem. Think for a moment. This is valuable. Thank you.